everybody. My name is Lianne Williams. I'm the head of marketing at Vumatel. I will be chatting with Saray. She's going to ask me a couple of questions around how I got to where I am. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I hope that there is somebody out there to find some value. All the best.
Because It's There with Saray Khumalo is proudly sponsored by Vuma.
In a world of possibilities, our choices define who we are. We can choose to simply get things done, but we choose to make a difference. We can choose to go far, or we can choose to go further. We choose great over good every time because we can. And because we can, we must. We don't just act, we activate. When we move forward. Instead of simply providing access, we see the potential for success. Because where others see data, we see dreams. To us, connecting means more than plugs and ports. We exist to empower ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We aim higher and we choose to do more. We don't wait for opportunities. We create them. Our choices define us, and when faced with the choice, we always choose extraordinary.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another exciting episode of Because It's There, a podcast about leadership, a podcast that says to you, you are a leader. Because it's there within you, just step up and see how much of an extraordinary being you are, made for exactly this time. And with us today is Lianne Williams, and today's theme is For the Age of Ideas. And she's going to highlight some of her journey, her learnings, and we're going to absolutely learn from Lianne Williams, who's a good friend of mine. Lianne, I've got to start with a little sentence that will open up and be an icebreaker. And you just need to complete the statement for us. The one thing that I have been putting off and promised to do soon is?
Further my studies. That is probably the easiest question out of all your questions. I have been procrastinating to no end with that.
Oh, wow.
I think it's, you think you want to do this at one moment in time, and then the world changes so quickly, and then it's something else. So I feel like I'm never quite at the right time or at the edge of what's about to change. So maybe that's also an excuse, who knows? But I will get to it.
Fantastic. As long as you know that you need to get to it.
Yep.
Which is just get an accountability partner, get a coach that will chase you up. You never know. It may happen soon.
Now I have one of those, and she's sitting on the other side of the screen.
Anyway, so let's get into it. Generation X's, such as yourself, are often clustered unfairly and labeled many things. But if you were to tell your personal story, where did you grow up? And how would you describe that environment? How has it set you up for the Lianne that you are today?
Sarah, I love that question. Not just from a career perspective, but from a personal perspective. I mean, we touched on it earlier on. And I think the world has changed so much, especially with the pandemic that's happening now, that the way we used to traditionally, especially in the marketing space, group people into different audiences has significantly changed. I mean, historically, not so long, I shouldn't say historically, it feels like ages ago, but it's just literally a year and a bit. Older people, the Gen X's, the baby boomers, we didn't like to go online. We didn't like to do online banking. We were very hesitant, and that's completely flipped. Now, when you look at the global studies and you see what people are doing, it's the older people who are engaging just as much as the younger people to stay in touch with those that they love. And not only in terms of geographic communities, but communities of the elderly, communities of family, communities of people with certain illnesses or diseases, or communities of upliftment. So, I think that's quite interesting. And my story, it's actually interesting because at work we're busy going through a transformational process as well. And while we were going through the history of South Africa and the history of different leaders and how certain things came about, I had, everybody thinks we've had all our aha moments, and every so now and again there's a gem that truly shines. So the one that really stood out for me was, we always talk about black and white, female and male, the young people and the old people. But as we started evolving and the conversation grew broader and wider, I realized that I'm not a white person, I'm not a man, but I was also privileged. I did not know what it was to go to bed hungry. When the age of computers came along, I did not have to wait 10, 15, 20 years to get connected and get online. I was protected to a certain degree within the space, my family environment, in that we were almost not in a bubble, but we were definitely protected from the heavy, hard-hitting political conversations that were happening. So we weren't oblivious to them, but we weren't necessarily an active part of them. Whether or not our parents chose to be there, that was a different conversation for a different time and a different group of people. So I think that reality was very powerful for me, because I have invested a lot of time, money, and effort in becoming a lot more self-aware and aware of my circumstances and environments. And to what you asked, what got me to this point. And it's my journey. And it's parts of other people's journeys that have resonated with me, where I have also chosen to put myself out there. And the biggest lesson outside of that for me was actually being able to make yourself vulnerable. People often think that this is all the fluff speak and it's the heart. It's actually really difficult to be your best self if you're not comfortable making yourself vulnerable. Because I truly believe that once you make yourself vulnerable, you truly appreciate that you really do need people and other environments and situations to learn lessons that you may have thought you've learned already.
Yeah, keeping it real. I guess that's why in today's world, authentic leadership becomes key to the success.
Absolutely. So yeah, but I think outside of that, I had a happy childhood. I think everybody has their ups and downs, like every family does. The one thing that I'm very, very grateful for is that our parents never kept us away from, these people are poor and those people are rich and these people are white and those people are not. Our household was always busy with a lot of children from mixed backgrounds. So sometimes I do find it a little strange, when we go into these broader conversations of how people struggle with certain things, because within townships especially, it's such a mixed melting pot of everything.
Yes.
You get all, like every community, but we especially back then, you didn't have high gated walls, and you knew who your neighbor was. If you did have a fence, it was probably a little wire fence running between you and your neighbor. And if it was bricks, it came no higher than your knee. So I think we were very fortunate in that sense to have a lot more of a diverse experience.
Yes.
Than a lot of people.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I seem to remember that your dad is a doctor. Do you think that helped in that environment? He was able to shield you, as opposed to somebody whose parents were probably trying to live, hand to mouth, whether they were domestics or so forth, or somebody that wasn't respected. Because if you remember correctly, teachers, policemen, and doctors were respected by the community. Is that something that may have played a role in your upbringing?
Sarah, so yes, my father is a doctor, but my father came from a background where you earn what you got. So hard work was very much the order of the day in our household. So in terms, I don't think he shielded us, I think what he did do with my mom is that they knew where the boundaries were for, sort of in respect to the age and the maturity level that we were at. Something that I will say that was very interesting was that I was born in Durban. We moved to Pretoria. I'd never heard Afrikaans before. I only spoke English. I had no friends. And when we moved here, then I went to a private school. So my father was this figure in the community, like you said, that everybody sort of looked up to and knew. And I was known as the doctor's daughter, or Lyle's sister. Lyle is my brother. And I was like, I have a name. But strangely enough, I found that it was the other way around. I almost had to show people, I had to work at showing people that I'm not a privileged individual who doesn't know heartache. I'm not this privileged child who doesn't know what it means to have to work for what you have. I mean, I remember when my father bought me my first car. It was a very interesting first car. My parents bought me this car. It was one color, but every panel was a different shade of red. And my friends were like, why don't you just ask the parents to buy you a new car? And I'm like, you don't know my parents. I know what the answer is going to be. If you need it, you have it. If you want it, you earn it. So it was a little bit of a different mold. And that's why I say people can learn from other people's stories, like you always tell us.
Yeah.
Because I think there is that stereotypical sort of idea that, if you come from this sort of family or that sort of family, it's all made for you. You got it handed to you, which is not the case.
No.
And personal, I always say when the front door closes, you don't know what's happening in people's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't know people's stories. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. Let's go on to ideas, right? As a person with expertise in communication, what do you make of ideas that have come out during this pandemic? Sometimes one gets the sense that there has been a ramp up in tools of technology and not necessarily the quality of ideas.
Yes. So, Sarah, I really believe that there are fantastic ideas. First, ideas, and they can come from anywhere. I don't care if it's the lady making tea, if it's the lady sweeping the floor, if it's the creditor, debtor, whoever it is sitting in the organization. Ideas can come from anywhere. And I also believe that most of the really good ideas come from the most weirdest conversation. Always say the conversations that take a short left are the ones that get you into the real creative spot. What I will say, though, is that with technology, I mean, everybody talks about how this pandemic has fast-tracked technology developments. What would have taken 8 to 10 years is now suddenly happened in a year or two. But I still feel as organizations and entities, we haven't quite got it right how to bring all these different pieces together. I think we all have fantastic ideas, and I think we're all driving wonderful initiatives, but it's still happening in pockets. And I know, I mean, it can very easily go into a political and government conversation about what they should be doing. We are in our country. It is our people. We are the people. We are the people living and experiencing these things every day. So a perfect example is at Vuma, we connect schools to 1 gig lines, and we don't charge them along with our ISPs. But that's one element. So online learning is fantastic. Yes, if you have connectivity. But what about the device that you require? What about the content that you need to access? What about channels that offer additional classes or other tutoring services? What about all of those things? And there are organizations who are doing bits of each thing on their own. But if we pull our resources together and know that we're working towards the single sort of goal of getting South Africans connected with access, because connectivity is one part of what we do at Vuma. What I love about where I am in my role and my career at the moment is that I've got the opportunity to add meaningful value with the product and service that we have, but as well as what it enables. And I think that is where a lot of the ideas, where we have a massive opportunity as corporates in this country to come together and drive a single-minded story, because we all after the same thing. We want our kids to have a good education. Yeah. And right now, that is where we are bleeding outside of our health health sector, that is where we are bleeding. And obviously the entertainment and restaurant sort of industries.
Absolutely. I'm very, as you know, I'm very passionate about education. One of my favorite quotes is, if you want to plant for 1 year, plant rice. If you're planning for 10 years, plant trees. But if you're planning for 100 years, invest in the education of the children. And that's
absolutely.
I'm so aligned, and I'm grateful, and I thank you and Vuma for your service, because you are indeed changing the narrative for the next generation.
Yes, and that is truly what excites me. It really is.
Absolutely. Let's go on to, you as Lianne. When did you first realize that the path of communication is one you were born to walk?
Oh, Sarah, that is a very interesting question. So when I started out studying, I actually started studying psychology, and my dream was to become either a clinical psychologist or a forensic psychologist. Went into practice for one. First, I went to the city morgue and discovered very quickly that forensic psychology was not for me. Then I did clinical. I practiced for my community service with a practitioner, and decided after a year that wasn't for me either. Then I went and I did research psychology, and I got very involved in data. And for about 8 years, I would look at, and I did my internship at an insurance company. So it wasn't sort of the norm. A research psychologist going into financial services wasn't the norm, and I loved it. And after about, I think it was about a year and a half, I'd just been made permanent. The HIV story broke, and the virus started showing itself, and it obviously started having an impact on different companies and our society. And the more I looked at the data, I was interested in, what is this data telling us? What is the story? But you can't get to the story before you transform the data into information. And that's where it started. It was in my second year at FNB Insurance, strangely enough. And I left it, and then I carried on doing data analysis, looked at broker books. And after about 8 or 9 years, then I really, really fell in love, because I wanted to know, when we've got this data, we've now turned it into information. What do these people who sit in marketing take and do with this stuff? What is the story that they are telling? Because data, I mean, you can slice and dice it to tell you whatever you want. But I truly believe the beauty behind it is, what is the story that you are sharing with others? Because it can be positive, it can be told positively, or it can be told negatively. And the more time I spent in that space, sort of talking to people and trying to understand that creative world, the more in love I fell with it. And that was, strangely enough, how I ended up at Discovery. Because, I was a brand manager for a very short time there, but that was the opportunity where I was finally in a space where I was able to mold a story from the data that was provided.
Yeah. And during this time, this transition, you figuring out what's going on and getting excited about communication, where were you emotionally? Was there a spiritual journey of sort, or was this just going through this?
This was Lianne being Lianne and trying to figure stuff out, Sarah. Look, my faith is sturdy and steady and strong. But at that time, I had a baby. I mean, my first son, I just had him, and he was about a year and a half. And I was working long hours, and I didn't want to fail. And I had so many questions that were swirling in my head, because I had a child that I wasn't there for, that I felt that I wasn't there for, because I was at work early and I left late, and spent many, many days and weeks with my mom. So it was very confusing, if nothing else. And this, I think, comes back to what I said earlier about, I personally don't believe you can dissociate your personal, private, and professional life from each other 100%. A lot of the reasons and the choices that, the reasons that I made the choices that I did, actually had to do with what was happening in my personal space. I had a child who needed me, but I also had a career that I was sort of still at the infancy of nurturing and growing, and I needed to build networks, and I needed to show that I can add value and build my credibility. But my child needed me more. So I had to go and find a space that was closer to home, all the practicalities of being a parent, but then still have the ability to nourish this other part of me that is so important. So definitely, I didn't have this 100% clarity now, but I did trust my instinct. So I always say, your dad doesn't know how to lie. And if you know that what you are doing is the right thing, I think it's very difficult to steer wrong. The trick is, how do you stay on that path when maybe 60, 70, 80% of the other people are moving in another direction?
That's interesting. And I mean, I've known you for quite a long time, and by now I'm sure you know what a Sherpa is.
Yes, I do.
So who would you say is the most important Sherpa on your journey? Maybe one, maybe two, maybe many. Who has been the most important Sherpa on your journey?
Sarah, I think I can't put it down to any particular person. I do think I've had the privilege of working and encountering a number of people who have taught me different lessons. One thing that I will say for me that is interesting, when I was reading through the questions you sent me, it's amazing when you're forced to really think about something, how much you can get out of that effort. Something that I found in reflecting on the sort of my past couple of years or my career, I want to say my toughest lessons in terms of building a career were learned by men. I learned those lessons from very hard, dominant, single-minded men who, those that hire people for being different and then get rid of them because they're just too different from those people. But the lessons that have stepped me in fast for learning how to build meaningful relationships in business and my personal space and nurture those to get to a common end goal that will be better for not just me, but for others, have come from women. And you are very much one of those ladies. I mean, I remember when I used to sit in meetings and think, I used to get so emotional and so worked up, and then I used to just say whatever came out of my mouth. And you would sit and say, and then I asked you, Sarah, in the next meeting, would you be able to tell me what I said right or how I can change things up? And it helps a lot, really. But that again speaks to number one, as the person asking for that help, be willing to ask for help. Number two, make yourself vulnerable. And number three, be willing to accept the feedback. And number four, find somebody who truly does share your values, your interests, your beliefs, and does have your best interests at heart. I think especially in the corporate world, dog eat dog. A lot of people, to climb that ladder, you've got to more often than not do and say things and behave in ways that aren't necessarily your inherent nature. But there have been a number of people. But I am very proud to say that the really long-lasting lessons that have got me to this point, where I am calm and content in my career and with me, have been women.
That is powerful. I mean, there's a lot of talk about women bringing each other down, and yet you're saying not necessarily.
I think if they say surround the people with whom you want to be associated with and how you'd like to be known. Goes for men and women, right? So if you're going to surround yourself with a man or a woman or a group of men or women who are aiming for that, be the best I, well, that's what you're going to get. But if you look for those who look for us to be the best we, but not forgetting that I am still an important part of the story.
Absolutely. It sounds like you've had mentors and coaches. How do you decide, who, maybe let's narrow in on one mentor, maybe in your early career. How did you meet them? How did you identify that, this is my person, this person can help me? What is that process?
I went through a few, so it really was a process. So I really struggled with strangely enough, with communication, not the lack of communication. I was just a little too brash. And the filter was broken. Filter and frequency were out the window. So strangely enough, I went to our HR business partner at the time, and I said, look, something is not working here, and it cannot be everybody around me. There's got to be something that I can do. So I went and I asked for, I didn't know if I needed a coach or a mentor. I just asked for somebody who would be able to assist me. And I got a lovely gentleman. His name is Clifford, or is Clifford. Lovely gentleman. And we went through a whole long process, because it's not an overnight thing. And Sarah, there were certain things that I could learn or I could grasp of what he was saying at the time, but there were so many other things that I only realized like 2 or 3 coaches and mentors later, because I wasn't ready, and I thought I understood what he was saying, until even now today, there's certain things that will come up. Oh, that's what Cliff means. Now I get it. And I'm talking, 17, 18 years ago.
Wow.
And so it really was a process, and I had different people for different things. So Clifford was very much a mentor in the sense, or a coach in the sense of helping me become self-aware, helping me understand that it's okay to show emotion, but it's think twice before you act from an emotional place. Yeah. So that was very much a sort of personal one-on-one session. Then I had another guy, he was and still is a Gibbs lecturer, and he was brilliant. But he spoke to me about strategy. And he actually mentored me a long time, because a lot of feedback I would get from people is, Lianne, you're such a hard worker. You do really well operationally, but I'd love to see the more strategic side of you. And I never understood what this meant, because I used to think strategy is this complicated thing that's only for clever people. And it's not really. If you're maneuvering relationships in the corporate world, believe you me, you are strategizing. If you are able to take something from the ideation or conceptual phase through to implementation, you are strategizing, because you're negotiating budgets, people, relationships, personalities, all of that. So yeah, it wasn't this is the right person, let's stick there. And this, no, I had a few. Yeah. But out of the few that I did have, there are literally, I would say, 2 or 3 that I've carried on with.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I like that. I think it's also important. I always say to people, when you get to Everest Base Camp, you use specific Sherpas, lots of them, but not all of them can take you to the top of the world. You need to be very deliberate. And I absolutely love that. Lianne, let's take a few minutes and listen to our sponsors, who are Vuma. They make this podcast possible.
Because It's There with Saray Khumalo is proudly sponsored by Vuma.
In a world of possibilities, our choices define who we are. We can choose to simply get things done, but we choose to make a difference. We can choose to go far, or we can choose to go further. We choose great over good every time, because we can. And because we can, we must. We don't just act, we activate. When we move forward. Instead of simply providing access, we see the potential for success. Because where others see data, we see dreams. To us, connecting means more than plugs and ports. We exist to empower ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We aim higher and we choose to do more. We don't wait for opportunities. We create them. Our choices define us, and when faced with the choice, we always choose extraordinary.
we're back. Let's contextualize Lianne's world. How is service part of the narrative in the ideas business nowadays? Most of the time, we cannot be blamed to think that the priority of modern day brand is to harness people's attention, which naturally equates to rands and cents.
Sure, Sarah, I think service is critically important. And again, I keep on referring back to the pandemic just because it has sped so many things up. My inherent belief historically, and it could be based in my background of psychology, is that people are people. Whether you're buying a house, a car, suites, or anything in between, your decision or your decision-making process doesn't change. And I think that businesses today are going to be held to how much they, or to how strongly they deliver on their brand purpose. And if you go and read any business's brand purpose, it doesn't speak to rands and cents. It speaks to what the product or service enables, promotes, or affords a person or a group of people. So I don't think that was ever not there. I think where we are sitting now is that that level of service expands far beyond the product or service that you're bringing to the table or taking to market. There's a global study that's done, I just can't think of the word now, but I think it's a global, global connected community or global web community. And it surveys over 2 billion people in the world. And the first thing, the number one thing that people across the world are looking to brands for today is how are you impacting people's lives on a daily basis? Not the big brand campaigns that get your names out there in lights and comes with all the rah-rah. It's what are the little things that you are doing on a daily basis that are touching people's lives in a meaningful way? So if you look at Vuma as an example, and sorry, I talk about Vuma because that is where I am and this is where my passion and my love lives. We are in the business of providing fiber. What sets me alight and sets my heart on fire is, what does that mean? Connectivity could mean a host of things. We get involved in service from supporting initiatives like Pink Drive. They have nothing to do with fiber connectivity, but they have everything to do with providing services in communities that need what they have to offer. So we are connecting people. We get involved with, iSchool Africa, with the schools that we connect, with Safe Hub. There are a number of organizations. Why? Because we also understand that the actual fiber connectivity, the physical product, is needed so that we can get people into a more digitized space. Yeah. So I think if people see that you are authentic and sincere in delivering your brand purpose and value, it will naturally turn into rands and cents. There's one thing I learned from a very difficult boss I had a while ago. He said, people don't do business with people they don't like. And that is very true. Yeah. You may get a big once-off deal, but after that, it'll go silent. Yeah. So I feel that, I feel the same way about brands. Yeah, absolutely. I think you've touched on something that, I know you say your previous boss used to say that people definitely don't do business with people they don't like. You'll find that people get repeat business. They're corrected until they get it right so that people can continue doing business with them. And it's because of that relationship that one has created. Absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. Do you try and do that connection with your clients? Is that the idea? Definitely. Definitely. So our marketing is very different to the traditional sort of corporate way of doing things. So usually you would have your marketing section who does marketing, you have sponsorships who does that, and CSI who looks after the social initiatives. Whereas at Vuma, because we truly believe, and again, this is what I absolutely love. It's the first time that as a business, we put our money where our mouths in. It's the first time that I have been in an organization where we don't just stand up and say something, we actually deliver on it. Our marketing speaks to what we say we want to achieve as a business. If we want to connect South Africa How many people can we connect? If we want to connect communities, how do we do that? Even over and above, if a community doesn't have fiber, does it mean we leave them out of whatever initiative we're driving? Absolutely not. We're involved in a lot of initiatives where the benefits of fiber or connectivity spill into areas that don't necessarily have that connectivity. But the positive impact of what it enables is definitely shared and felt.
Amazing. So you talk passionately about Vuma. You are the head of marketing at Vuma.
Yeah.
And part of your mandate is to initiate CSI strategies, right? One of those initiatives is to help realize Vuma's vision of connecting fiber to school initiatives. You've said that a couple of times in this conversation. Yes. What do you see as the biggest gain in driving digital transformation and breaking digital barriers for the youth and the next generation?
Sarah, so, when I joined Vuma, that is very interesting to me because I also wanted to understand, we've connected X amount of schools, but again, if they don't have devices, if they don't have content, if they don't understand what the opportunities are that can be provided by this technology, what is the point, right? So we have spent a lot of time, and I have pushed really hard. I've pushed the team to say, guys, okay, so the school has fiber. Now what? Now what? And that is where we partner with people like yourselves and other entities who can come in and say, look, financially, you may not be able to afford to go and fly to another country. The reality is we can't take 40,000 kids or 400,000 kids and say, let's fly you to Europe so you can experience what another country or continent feels like. But what we can do is open up those windows in a virtual environment and say, this is what awaits you out there. And it is possible for you to get there. Yeah. We can't tell those stories on our own. And also, they're not necessarily our stories to tell.
Yes.
Our story is to provide the opportunity for these kids to see that the world is bigger than the four main streets of the particular area that they live in. I mean, I remember growing up, you mentioned my father's a doctor, and we were by no means desperate or in dire straits. But I can remember friends going to town. To them was like me saying, Flip, I'm going overseas. And it was literally a taxi ride away from where we live. So I have this thing in my mind all the time. I want children who grew up in the place and the environment like I grew up in, to know that the world is bigger than those four streets, and that it is possible for you to break out further than those four streets.
Absolutely.
And I will leverage anything and anybody and any platform to get that message to as many of our kids as possible.
Yeah. So as I listen to you, I'm seeing the passion. This is not just marketing speak. No. How did you realize that your personal values, your why, is aligned to Vuma's purpose as an organization?
Sorry, that is also a little bit of a journey. I mean, you know my history, and if anybody looks at my CV or goes onto my LinkedIn profile, they will see that I've been through many organizations. For me, it was a very personal journey. I had to learn and figure out what my why was. And my why actually isn't defined to any specific thing. My why that I realized is my belief. And often people will say, but why do you make it sound like it's so easy? And I'm like, because it is. My belief is if it's right and I'm doing right, how can it be wrong? And when I joined Vuma, I was very, very honest with the person who interviewed me. So Simon, our Chief Commercial Officer, interviewed me. And I said to him, I'm probably going to sound like the most unambitious person you've ever had, but I'm not driven by a title. I want to know that when I come to this business, I have the opportunity to have a realm of autonomy to do what is right. If the business says this is what they stand for, then I want to know upfront that this is what we are going to set up and go forth and do. And if it's not, then at least I can make the decision if that's where I want to be or not. So I was very grateful, and I still am very grateful that what was said and promised in the interview actually did pan out. Because we know, just like interviewees will tell you everything that you want to hear about them, so will organizations. I was very fortunate in the sense that they were truthful. And you can also feel when you walk into a place, you get a sense of what the vibe of that particular company and environment is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I can attest to that, having worked closely with Vuma as well. So, Lianne, one of,
yes.
I think it's the second last question, if we don't come up with another one. If you were to conceive a utopian world of branding and marketing, what would it look like, and what function would it serve society as a whole?
Oh, Sarah, if we could all just realize that we're looking for the same things. We have different services and different products, but at the end of the day, we all want to make the world that we live in a better place. Oh, it sounds like a beauty competition question and answer, but it really is true. And I mean, I'm not oblivious to the fact that we run this. Our CEO will often say to me, Lianne, heart. Whatever we do with heart. And I go, absolutely, you don't ever have to question the heart. But I'm also realistic, and I know that if you don't have money coming through the front doors, you're not going to have any money to go out and do good. Because if you don't have anything left over from running your business operationally, I doubt very much that people are going to go and want to spend their money in other things. So I do believe that if brands and businesses truly went out and delivered on what they say they want to do as a business, yes, for the communities that they operate in, it's a no-brainer. I think what happens all too often is, like I said, we take these pieces and we put them into their own silos, and we don't see how very easily they can interconnect with each other. Why does marketing have to be at the exclusion of CSI initiatives? Is your brand not the story you tell? So if the story you tell is that I want to make this place better for all of us, how do you fulfill on that promise if you don't act on it? So it sounds really simple. I know I'm probably oversimplifying it, but the point is that we are all doing it, just doing it in pockets.
Absolutely. How has collaboration and partnerships helped you, whether it's in your role or as Vuma, get better traction in the market?
Oh, sorry, we thrive on partnerships. I believe in partnerships and collaboration with my whole heart. There's not a single organization that can fix anything on their own. It's too expensive, it would take too many people, and we just don't have the time. So we've actually, our reach in terms of branding has come not necessarily from what we drive, it's from who we partner with. So my question that I usually ask the team is when they say, can we do this or can we do that? I go, okay, if this is the message we are pushing, how can this person or this entity or this organization assist us in amplifying that message? Yes. How do the tools, the voices, whether it's hands, whether it's feet, whatever it may be, that partnership brings, how does that carry that further for us? And that is how, I know people usually have their list of criteria. We will give money if you do this and this and this and this. If this is what is needed in this community, even though we don't do it, if it's the right thing and they've told us this is what they need, who do we need to partner with to make sure that our reach extends far beyond what we as a single entity can achieve? So for me, it's critical. And we also have partnerships where our partners leverage off the services that we provide. That we're telling a single story, so it's easy.
Absolutely, it has to be a win-win, for the community you're servicing, for yourself, and for the partnership, for it to be sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Tell us a little bit more about, even if it's one project, yes, that either what you're working on now or something that speaks so dearly to you, something that Vumatel is doing through your CSI
Yes. Oh, so again, this sort of it's an intricate mesh of marketing, CSI, activations. There's a whole host of things, but we've actually just launched we call it My Community Cooks campaign.
Yes.
And we know that artists are really struggling and people need platforms to showcase their ideas. We've got so many issues that need to be dealt with. So we've put up this campaign to say creators, whether you're an artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're a chef, whether you're somebody who comes up with a brilliant science idea that could solve for electricity outages, I don't know. But we've created a platform where people can actually submit their work and we will give them acknowledgement and we will help them grow their reach and amplify their voice and amplify their message. And also part of that, it's like we also going to, we haven't done it yet, but we are going to be rolling out a whole series around how important it is to donate blood and organs and platelets and bone marrow. Like I said, communities are not just geographic locations and groupings of people. There are so many people who desperately need what we can so easily give. And so we've come up with this line that says, what's cooking in your community? Share what's cooking. And it could be anything. And I am so excited you have no idea, because it's positivity.
Absolutely.
And we've already started seeing people, our residents in different communities, reply to us and submit their work, and they want to put out a piece in the PR space, and it's amazing. It's amazing. People do so much good, Sarah, that we don't always get to see. So I'm really looking forward. I'm very excited, and fingers crossed that it works. But I really, really am looking forward to see what this campaign is going to bring forward. And it's not a 6-month plan. We want this to run for at least 3 years.
Wow. And how do people get involved? I mean, is it anybody or is it specific people? And how do they get involved?
No, it's anybody. Go onto our Facebook page. You'll find it on just about all our community pages. You'll find it on the Vumatel page, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. They've got it on Instagram. I can't remember if it's on our website yet. My apologies. We are still busy with our website. But otherwise, there is a marketing address, marketing@vumatel.co.za. They can send an email through and just say, look, I'd like to get involved, and we'll shoot up the link. But I really am excited about that, because it's going to encompass so many different spaces.
And what is the objective?
Well, there are a couple of objectives. The one is that we want to try and get people to start a small business if they can. So a very small part of what we are doing is, we know in South Africa, getting local photography, it's a mission. And if you do find it, it's usually very expensive. So we actually want to take all the photographers from communities and build a platform and enter into an agreement where we say we'll do a very easy revenue share, for example, and start getting them to take their pictures, upload it, sell it, and it's open to everybody. I mean, we spend, as marketers, we spend a fortune on images, a fortune, and then they're not even people who look like us. So, and I don't understand why. So that's one part of it. The other part, I think, is to show the world that there is so much good, especially in our townships. There is such amazing work that gets done. And they go overseas and they shine. These people go and shine overseas, and yet we don't even know who they are at home. I find that very sad. I mean, there's an artist that we're using as part of this campaign, Senzo. I mean, he's a graffiti artist. He's been to New York. He's been to all these amazing places. And when they mentioned them to me, I went, who? So it's sad. So I'm like, how do we celebrate and take pride in what we have? So it's not just about Soweto go and meet the world, or Eldorado Park go and meet the world, or Eerstris or Mamelodi. It's world. Come and meet us.
Yes.
Come and see what we are doing. Come and see what we have to offer. Just as much as you are seen and heard, trust you me, we've got just as much.
Absolutely. Anyway, so for the last question, Describe your best failure or challenge and how it propelled you forward.
Sarah, my biggest challenge has nothing to do with my career, believe it or not. My biggest challenge came from a very deep-rooted insecurity within myself of not being good enough. So when I sat, and I think also looking back, and after many sessions with a head doctor, I realized that I was telling myself the story. Other people weren't saying it, but I would walk into a meeting and I could be maybe one of 3 ladies sitting around a table of 20 men, and I wouldn't want to say anything because I would wonder, oh, what if it's the wrong thing, or what if it's stupid, or what if it doesn't make sense, or if I sat in a room. I was very comfortable talking to people socially. I've always been comfortable with that. But professionally, I would always either step back and take the back seat, or I would come across as very forceful, which wasn't my intention. But I didn't want to be seen as weak. And I confused being vulnerable with being weak. So, and it took me many, many years to work through that. But when it landed, I was like, oh, I get it. I can be me. I don't have to be rude about it, and I don't have to be brash, but I can be me, and I am enough. I cannot offer more than who and what I am.
Yeah.
And if I don't believe in it, how on God's green earth will I get other people to believe in it?
Absolutely. I think that's about authenticity and just being you. And that's why I always say that we are all uniquely extraordinary, and being ordinary is a choice.
Absolutely.
And that is important. Thank you so much for your time, Lianne. And this was an amazing interview and conversation. And I hope to see you again soon.